Hello, everybody. Welcome to Hamster's Hobby Hang. I saw the intro finishing, and I always forget it ends with "on the anvil." So I was trying to cut it off before it got there. Welcome, welcome. Hello. I know it's been a little bit. Thank you for being here. I did some unpacking because if you're like me, uh, basically I moved and made everything livable, which means additional unpacking slowed to a crawl. But I found some minis I forgot I had ready to go. This is I think this is an official like Rangers of Shadow Deep miniature from North Star. And then I found a bunch of I have like 12 of them sitting here. Some skeletons from Die Hard that I love. Yeah, free min it is like buying them again, right? It's like, "Oh, look at that." It's like they're brand new. Yes, there's some stains here, but yeah, when I moved, I got a new mat for the desk. Um, it's smaller than my last one, which I didn't realize, but it's pretty much plenty for like the actual working area. Like previously, it basically covered the whole area of like where the palette is and where the paints are, which I guess you don't really need. Um, but yeah, there's some glue spots. Uh, Getting hot over there. It has been hot here and hot and rainy at the same time, which is not fun. I'm not a big like umbrella user because out here in New York, like the sidewalks are narrow and there's a lot of traffic and it's a nightmare to navigate umbrellas. So I have a rain jacket, but then when it's hot, it's miserable. But I'm pumped to paint some minis. I haven't really. Oh God, I don't know my parameters. I'm hitting chords with the brush and they're flying everywhere. Yeah, I haven't just sat down and painted minis in a while, so we'll have some fun. I've painted some Warhammer here and there. Um, but I guess it just feels slow because I'm trying to start a new army. So I'll finish a unit. I've only finished like a couple units, but then it's like, oh, there's so much more to go. Dodge the heat in New Hampshire so far. Yeah, I tried to hold off the on the window AC for a while because it gets expensive, but it is time. I suppose I'll give you here a heads up. Um, I know I've been off for a while, but on Thursdays I'm going to take a class in August. It's like right after Gen Con. And it's gonna last for a couple months. So I think we're gonna be off on the stream for that time. But then we'll be back. We got plenty to do, thankfully, now that I found this stuff. I suppose maybe I should bring some Warhammer home because it's mostly brush only. At least some of the units are. Some of them I use the airbrush, but I've been doing that less and less actually. Like for certain effects, I like it, but I don't use it on everything nowadays. Yeah, self hobby. Right. Yeah, no cadmium. Oh, you know what? I do have one cadmium. I do have one cadmium, but I am conscious of it. Um, I haven't used these brushes and they've been cleaned and rinsed, so I can't put it in my mouth again. You're right. That's a good reminder. They haven't been used in a while, so they've been sitting out on the desk. They were a little frayed, so I got to get them going. Maybe at this point, this one is due for like a replacement for really, really sharp precision, but for our purposes, like tabletop plus standard, should be fine. All right, what paints do I have here? it's, it's been a little bit. This one's running low. Well, not low for miniatures, but I've used more than I expected. But I guess I've had this on the hobby hang desk for it's probably been a couple years, so we're doing pretty good, pretty good if I really think about it. I know I really love this model, right? I think the North Star stuff is so good in that sense of like just enough detail and lots of character, but it's not over complicated, you know? It's not like loaded with stuff. Speaking of Warhammer, my strategy has been to just clump details together as far as color. It's like, look, all the pouches and belts and packs and even like grenades and stuff. I'm doing 40k a little bit for the new edition. It's like, look, they're all going to be the same neutral color, okay? I'm not picking all those out. I'm just not. And it's a chaos army. I'm doing corn, like blood for the blood god corn. And they're known for like red armor and like brassy trim everywhere. And the first thing I said to myself, I was like, I'm not painting any trim, okay? I'm just not. So I've done what I think is a fun thing and added a brassy. It's kind of turning more gold, like classic yellowy gold, which sometimes brass looks like. But it's on the weapons. It's like, okay, I'll add a brassy yellowy color on the weapons so that it exists in a flashy way, but I'm not picking out trim because I just want to get an army on the table quickly. For 11th edition, it has just released. Yeah, kind of like Rangers of Shadowdeep itself. Very fun game. I haven't gotten to play many scenarios, but I've read through the book multiple times. And we had a scenario written for it in Wildlands, if you remember that, based on a pack terrain. Very cool, like co-op PvE game. Just make a ranger, they can hire crews and stuff, and you progress in a campaign of PvE scenarios and get gear and abilities. All of Joe McCullough's games are very cool in that way. I have one book called Silver Bayonet, which is like Napoleonic era PvE kind of skirmish, but it's like werewolf type situation, like you're fighting werewolves and vampires and stuff. Ooh, this one's really low. I think at the studio I have another pack of these intro paints. What's a shame is like this is kind of the sample starter pack for these paints that I love. And these sizes are like perfect for models because they're small and you don't need a lot, but they don't sell them individually that way. But thankfully the starter pack is fairly affordable for what you get and it lasts me forever, honestly. So like I say replacement, it's the second one that I've ever purchased and I've been using them for years here in Hobby Hang and I have gotten like I actually found a bunch of these on eBay, almost the whole collection in this size for very cheap compared to retail. So I grabbed that. But I only use a handful of them, like for mixing at Hobby Hang. But I have a bunch of others if kind of what ends up happening is I'll do a test model with mixing my normal paints, and then I'll sort of grab stuff based on the mixes for like mass painting, so I don't need to mix as much. But I like the experimentation, mixing first. What do I need here? The black I rarely mix with, but I always put it out for the base rims at the end. And maybe a niche case. I don't know if some of y'all remember, but one of the biggest things that upped my painting was just not putting any black on the palette because I would mix with it a lot and it just really dulls color. So it's like, okay, how can I desaturate to get dark colors but without using black? It's a really fun experiment that got me used to mixing more. Yeah, I suppose I could refill the little pots. It might be better on the home desk because I'm working with like this has got to be like a 2 by 3 space that I work on here at Hobby Hang. Like there's not much more than what you see on camera. So basically, all I have here is like every color on the color wheel in a warm and a cool version, and I pick and choose like which ones to put on the palette. I'm just talking about like the bottles on my desk. So I basically have like two of each color that you'd see there, a black and a white, a couple of like earth tones like your yellow brown, your orange brown in case, and then I have like the fluorescence in case we do a super hyper glow, and like some primers and stuff. So I don't know, there's like 20 bottles on the desk here. Yeah, that's what's cool about those games is, kind of like an RPG, it's just the narrative of the flow between encounters is what creates the story. And there's like injuries that will carry over, could possibly carry over between. You might have a crew member straight up die. Oh, this is kind of interesting. Uh, you know, when I got this starter set, I had these two colors in here, and I'm looking at this green. And this is from like I've read a lot of books, like traditional painting books from artists, and they're different palettes. Like which colors do they like to use? And when I first got this set, I was like, what is the deal with this green? I love this green, like on its own. It's incredible. But why this green instead of just like a more traditional green like this, right? Like why of all things throw this in there? Why? And I finally figured it out talking about not having black on the palette is basically to desaturate a color, you would mix the complements. So in the instance of green, it'd be red, right? And burnt sienna is kind of red, right? And these mixed together create a very rich black together. And with in different ratios, you can kind of get grays or even a brown. But they, if uh, when I was skipping black on the palette, these together make a very rich black. And then for a traditional green, I don't know if I have the original starter ones here, but I think it comes with ultramarine and their primary yellow. And so like these are here to make green. It's kind of a warmer blue and then your yellow to make that poppy green. But then if you're gonna add a green, they add this because combined with this earth tone, it makes black for you. So just little thing like almost kind of scientific things like the formulas, the math almost, the color math is why that set was designed that way. And I mean, I probably owned this for like years, like 2 or 3 years before I figured that out. So that was kind of a fun discovery with the Viridian, this Viridian hue. And I guess the big thing, this brand, I mean, I like this brand, but the main thing that I why I get these for mixing is because they're very limited in their pigments. Um, your primaries are gonna have one pigment. They're always on here, S2. And that's why this green is also good, is normally to make a green, you need two pigments, right? And this one has two pigments, but even keeping it to two makes it consistent. So the problem, like sometimes I found myself really frustrated mixing hobby paints because they're very good for making really unique colors that we like. We'll grab one, it might match our army or something for the lore. But when you start mixing them, you don't know the pigments in the bottle. So sometimes they do strange things. Like you'll mix a yellow and a blue, but you're like, why is this not like doing what I would intuit, like I would intuitively think it does? We know that blue and yellow makes green, and it kind of does. And the biggest culprit is having white paint in the mix. You don't know how much white is in there, which really desaturates the color and makes it not bold and bright. So anyway, switching to just this set of like single to two pigment colors is what unlocked mixing for me, and just sticking with it, like don't use anything else. But that's what it makes it more intuitive to mix basically because they're predictable more so. I don't have very many colors on here, but I'm talking a lot and we have plenty to work with, so let's just get into it. Um, Speaking of traditional paints, a bunch of stuff I primed this way because I saw a lot of canvas painters kind of priming their canvas in a sort of middle orange brown like this, and it had some cool effects. Um, for us in miniatures, the big thing is opacity. When you go right over like black, we all have seen this, right? It just takes layer after layer after layer to actually get coverage. And so this can like support the opacity of a color over fewer layers. And just sometimes there's a little bit of a glow visible underneath, even if you don't notice it outright at the end. Kind of if you were to paint both of these models, one with this, one without at the end side by side, you would kind of notice the brilliance of it shining through because all paint is somewhat transparent, even really paint opaque paints. Um, to the point where like your eyes will sense it even if you don't like can't like outright see it. It would just have like with interaction with the light and the way your eyes see light, it does the thing basically. I don't know everything behind it, but and then even sometimes you can, if you look closely, deliberately see it where if you because of that transparency and you know it's impossible to get a full 100% perfect layer. Sometimes little bits will poke through and add a little kind of vibration and noise to the effect. So anyway, that's why this is primed this way. And you can see we still have a bunch of dark recesses. So for our exaggerated contrast of tiny miniatures, we can still do that. But I just think my process will be a little different than, say, one of these, which is still starting dark, but not fully black. And in the same way, will have impact through that transparency at the end, but maybe less so, but give us poppy shadows that we leave behind. Whereas this might require some sort of black lining, dark lining at the end more, or I'll just have to start my layers darker. Like here, I could afford to maybe start more in the middle on top of something like this. But anyway, I was just looking at this like I primed these like 2 years ago or something, so I was just thinking about my thought process when I was looking at them today. But how about we put some paint to model? Imagine that. Okay. Yeah, anytime I've started with an orange brown, you can kind of put almost any color on top of it and get decent opacity quickly in fewer layers. And the reason for that, I was just saying to desaturate a color to make a neutral gray or a brown all the way to black, you would mix complementary colors, which basically includes every primary, right? Like red and green. Green is blue and yellow, plus red is every primary, right? Blue and orange are complements. If you mix blue and orange, they'll desaturate. Orange is red and yellow plus blue. So that's why a brown can usually support the opacity of almost any color because the mix that creates it includes every color, every primary color. So there's more to it where like if you go heavy temperature contrast, a warm shadow plus a cool main color it's supporting, or vice versa. You could do that thing, or the opposite. If it's warm on warm, it will boost the warmth. So you don't have to do this brown in particular. Any brown or any neutral color can work as sort of a primer in a similar way, depending on the effect that you want. But for like a ranger guy like this, that's kind of why I went with this golden, sunshiny, kind of springtime glow, warm glow, right? Yeah. 30 minutes with just base coating? I know that's classic hobby hang. I've been a little better, but we're back to tradition now. This might not be super realistic, but I kind of like the idea. I was reminded of a relic blade model I did years ago, I think on Hobby Hang, where there was kind of that classic like tights white looking thing on the undergarments, like a long john kind of cottony white. So maybe on the sort of leggings and sleeves, you can have something like that. Yeah, speed painting. All right, step one, 30 minutes of banter. Kind of starting to get in that classic earthy ranger coat. I always like to have a little saturation in the shadows, kind of what we were talking about before, where the deepest layer will kind of influence the glow of and the color of the upper stuff. But with each additional layer, like we can kind of shift the color if we want, and we can always go all the way to glazing at the end if we really want to change the color. But the main thing now is that I do in these early steps is just the value contrast, the brightness. Make sure we can see the model and get all that high contrast. That's the main type of contrast we hear when we're looking at miniature painting YouTube, and it's like more contrast, more contrast is the value. But what's fun with this and the spontaneous kind of mixing is we have multiple kinds of contrast. So right now we have like a cool and a warm temperature contrast with the base layer and the top one, right? While we're pushing the value contrast. But the value contrast is the main thing that makes you see all the details on the table, the difference between the darkest dark and the lightest light. So I think it's probably the most important one. And then once we nail that ratio of the range of darkest dark to lightest light, then we can shift the color a bit. So here we're getting a little more desaturated. So if we want a little more color punch, more saturation, we can glaze it once we've achieved the value contrast we want. And it will always shift back and forth. Like if we go super, super bright and then glaze it, the value contrast will lessen because we're putting paint over the brightest brights. So it's always back and forth. But I don't even mind the color of that actually. When we paint everything else, like right now it looks really bright because it's the only part we've painted. Maybe we'll do some additional highlighting. Just because relatively it's... I kind of like that though. The cape is sort of dry and dusty and worn, and maybe this can be darker. Like maybe we don't need to over highlight some of this stuff. Enough that we can see the details separated from each other, but other than that, especially on the bags and stuff, I try to keep it pretty minimal since that's not the most important part. But I still want to make sure they're like visible, right? It'll be fun because it's not like a. I don't want it to look like pure white. It's like that worn white. Especially because we have metal weapons, we can't have this be super light in comparison. Get some wear and tear on there. I went a little heavy handed there for a second, but glaze it back. Kind of want to hit this belt a little bit, but it's so hidden in the pose. Just make sure you can kind of see some edges of the buckle and stuff. Probably just call it good there. I'm gonna exaggerate the gloves a bit so we can see them along the axe handle. Okay, and this guy's been in the woods, out and about, seen a lot of the elements. So I want to show that in the skin tone somewhat. Again, I'm exaggerating here. I'm gonna glaze this, but I want to hit the value contrast first, so because the face is the most important part, right? So just want to get pretty bright. We can glaze it back. I might even, for that like sunburn sort of look, I might add more red than I might usually add. That's too red, but looks like clown makeup, but then we'll keep going and leave some of it behind. Good opportunity for like a nice forehead wrinkle there. It's kind of fun. All right, decent values. Just for some of that flush in the cheeks, I might just add a touch of red again. And the nose. And again, as we paint the surrounding stuff, we might push it more, but that's good for now. Because there's a lot of brown on here, I might just do straight black for the hair. So the one thing about the golden base layer is, and any base layer really, is if the material that you're painting is going to be straight black, I usually just have to go all the way back to black for that one area. Ooh, see, look at the face now with the black hair around it. Looks a lot more vibrant and lively. That's cool. ears are a little desaturated. We'll add some red on the ears too. They look like ghost ears right now. Yeah, he's real sunburnt. I like that though. It's kind of fun. Make sure to make sure that he has eyebrows somewhat. Got a little black in the crease of the nose there, so it's a little too exaggerated for me, but we can just pluck in some of that red. Maybe that's too far, but this will be on the table though, so I don't know. I think I'll let it dry and see. You know what I miss, especially for metals, is a darker blue. Right now, the only blue on the palette is this, so it can mix only fairly limited purples and blues. So I'll put a darker one on there real quick. See the brownishness on the blade of the axe. Maybe we leave some behind and there's kind of a little bit of rust weathering or something. We'll see how much gets covered up, but that's why I like to start with some color identity on the model in the base, even if it's not going to like live as that color in the end. It's this kind of atmosphere, I guess. And personally, my favorite way to do axes, it's not necessarily realistic, but I like to do a sharp blade and then like the face, like the flat plane, like right here is just fairly dark, like there's almost no light hitting it, which I don't think is exactly how it would look, but anytime I try to do lighting on the flat plane next to the blade, it looks kind of strange, so if we just make this the blade really sharp, it'll be flashy enough to distract from the flat face anyway. Right? So if we just make sure this shape is really sharp, and then we still got to do the edges, but we can almost just paint reflections on the blade and leave this how it is. And then on the handle here, we'll indicate a little light. Do a little painting on the bottom. It's not as important, right? Because it's on the bottom. Less visible. Yeah, not very neat of a line, but I'm gonna make sure, well, okay, so to make it look reflective too, we need dark next to light. So if that's our lightest, the blade's the lightest light, we'll make sure dark is right next to it. And then maybe I can add some highlight like in the middle of that plane, but not, it won't be the brightest part. Here I'm just kind of like trying to draw the map of where my highlights and shadows will go to sell the reflectiveness. Because then from there, we're just kind of paint by numbers, like paint in a smaller area, lighter lights where you mapped out the highlights, and then same with the shadows. So here's kind of where I'll put my lightest is at the tip because that's dramatic. So if it's bouncing highest at the tip, we'll let it bounce and do a couple more that we won't push quite as much. And then there's another corner here, so we'll do it like that. See, this is a fun, happy accident too. This is like the key to my style for this Tabletop Plus. Is like did this little short blob. So okay, we'll make that a nick, a little nick in the blade. Instead of covering it up, instead of fixing it, air quotes, we'll just let it be a thing. Following the spontaneity. Okay, and we can get pretty bright just to push the detail, like the existence of the handle. We'll get pretty bright up here too. But now that I have this like fence of super bright and super bright, I don't want to do too much brighter on this little bounce in the middle here. I think I like it, but I want to keep it not quite as bright. Maybe we'll even use white, but less, a smaller area of white. See that? I don't know if that reads super well, but maybe we can even come back in with some shadow. All right, so I'll do a little bit on the bottom just to make sure it exists there. We're not going to see it very much, so. The reason I'm doing a highlight in this direction, even though it's facing the ground, is the light will bounce up from the ground and hit this a little bit if it's a reflective surface, but not as much as here, where the light source, like the sky, is hitting it. But I still want to highlight the bottom for the bounce light. Yeah, we'll probably just even leave it like that. It's a little sketchy, but for super reflective stuff, I have like a heavy body. It's a thicker white. Just to hit some of the highest points. And I haven't even highlighted the hair at all, but I almost don't mind it how it is because the face has so much character going on. I guess I'll just do a touch. Highlight. Kind of indicate the crown of the head. That's what's fun about highlighting hair is like it kind of, it's almost like metal, like it's really kind of oily and reflective, so it sort of bounces in a halo shape. The light, I mean. Around the crown. One thing I do want to do is try to indicate a lip there in the beard. A lot of blood there, so I'll get my red back. Yeah, that's the stuff. Get a lip in the beard. All right. Now to the base. Lots of warm, so it's earthy, but maybe it can be cooler for contrast to visually pop the model at the base. Still want it to look like organic. Maybe if it's really rocky, so we can do a cool gray. It's pretty warm. That's more blue. All right. Looks kind of neat. Still want to add some little earthy stuff. This is kind of what I like about just doing like some gravelly, sandy looking base is I can kind of just hand paint patches into grass and rock and dirt just with color. I mean, kind of get away with it, even though it's like kind of the same texture physically, like the paste or whatever you use. There's still green, but it's a cooler green than like the cape, right? So we can kind of get away with it, I think. Kind of mossy. Maybe he's in like a swampland, you know? Or corrupted by magic or something, you know? And then you know one of my favorite tricks. Who needs flower tufts? Flowers are very like small in scale, I feel, to our traditional minis. So hey, I'm gonna invent them with dots. Little dandelion weeds with a single coat of paint. And I don't even need to paint eyes. I kind of like the dark, like under the brows, just dark. It kind of gives like a ranger feel to me. Weathered trail veteran. Here we are at the victory lap already. And this would maybe be skin. I'm forgetting about this knee here. Want a little something in there. There we go. Nice. Here we go. Less than an hour. That'd be good on the table. Maybe hit this scabbard, just make it cooler against the browns. I suppose the handle, the guard here would be metal, so we'll just hit that. There, that's good enough. Could have maybe more differentiation between like the pack and the this garment, but it's not bad. Could even do like a black pouch to really make it come off. Maybe I'll just make it red, like a purpley leather against the warm. I'm gonna make sure I have some value contrast quick so we can so it remains visible after we glaze it, I mean. This is kind of like slap chop advanced. I'm just like putting a lot of white so that we have a value that will take the color and stay visible afterward. Like contrast paint style, but just not exactly. Now I'm just coloring book style painting there. Fill that in. There we go. A little more separated. I like how it's a little more connected to the handle, so we kind of have a triangle of like chest strap pouch to handle as a shape. It's kind of fun. There we go. All right, Tome, thanks for tuning in. I'm glad we got a model finished before you had to go. I really like the sort of weathered face that we got. Making this look easy? Well, you've seen me practice. I've been doing this stream for years. You've seen the lessons happen in real time. That's a cool mini. I'm glad I got that painted. Just like, I mean, honestly, brilliant in its composition. Like, so simple, but so full of character at the same time. I mean, just look at that. What a cool model. Yeah, I like that a lot. Okay, I think I'm gonna take 5, use the restroom. Let me make sure we can see this guy on the screen quick. For what it's worth. There we go. Okay, I will BRB y'all, and we'll do maybe a skeleton next. I don't know if we'll finish. We have 35 minutes. We'll get started. All right, 1 second. Hey, Talon, thank you for the sub. Thank you, Finley, for the sub. I saw that earlier. Appreciate the support. We just painted this little Rangers of Shadowdeep guy. Really love this exaggerated red on the face. Like he's faced the elements. That'll look cool on the table. Alright. Let's see how far we can get on this. Maybe we can try something even speedier. Kind of more on the slap shot mentality. But a little more deliberate. We'll do our map of the highlights, like on the metal axe we did. Because there's a lot of armor, so we can kind of get away with that here. A lot of the same material. So let's try to map out like where my highlights will be. And any accidents that happen, we'll just kind of roll with. If we get a blob of white, we'll make that a highlight. I mean, look at this brush, right? Like it's not even precise. Just blocking in some wear and tear, some lighting. We'll kind of work in reverse. Highlight down. Or start with the highlight and then maybe glaze down here and there. Is that a sleeve or armor? Yeah, it's kind of blocky like the armor. We'll say it's metal. Some texture going on here. Kind of dry brushy. This is all scratched up. We can be exaggerated because we're gonna glaze it, so it will we can knock down the value as much as we want, pretty much. This is hidden mostly, so I'm just making it visible for the most part, and that's it. The light's coming here, we'll do a big strip of white on this metal and then just hit the rest. Or strip of light, so if that's what I said. Okay, so for the spear, we hit the edges, which is good to make it reflective. And now we'll just map where do we want the shine to be. Just the drama. There we go. Right on the tip. So, it's pretty loose like Slapshot, but I'm trying to be deliberate in the placement of the lightest lights and leaving room for there to be dark. So like we have this exclamation point, this exclamation point, similarly 1, 2 on the shield rim is kind of where my head's at. Little bloom right here. Leave the rest. We'll do one on the back side. I kind of imagine like, since we have a 3D thing, there's no way to make it like fully realistic, so I imagine like 4 spotlights. At any point, you're gonna hit like a Vogue pose. What's the drama of like the main 2 to 4 poses? And it's like stage lights. Boom, 1, 2, 3, 4. Hit the camera. And now that I have a map that's half deliberate, half accidental, I'll continue to push the lightest lights. And I'm getting familiar with the model too, which is valuable for speed. Just like, okay, on here I'm looking for these focal points. Now I kind of know where they are. More than realism, I'm trying to add drama, like exaggeration. We can sell it however we want. If we're saying the light is hitting here, okay, great. Just make the surrounding parts dark. On the forward foot, just make sure I have a little something to glaze. Back foot hidden by shield, not as important. It'll be impactful if it's dark. Same here. This foot's a little under the body, so we can exaggerate the shadow of that. And from our last model, we have some mixes on the palette still, so maybe we can leverage that. I'm just sort of filling in like the middle values, and I'll probably have to go back for the highest lights, but that's okay. Because we've learned the map. And this, what we're doing here is where that base layer with this reddish purple will shine. So we can just kind of leave it behind, and it will give us some value, some visual value in its atmosphere. But here I'm just kind of like ultra shortcutting. But it's the same thing we did on the last model with a little more time. Might not be quite as refined, but we're hitting the same marks. And once again, I'm kind of doing the same thing as like a contrast paint slap shot, but just with regular paints using the transparency that they already have. It's kind of a cowl here. So now I'm mostly coloring just to separate the details, like what's not armor. We have some bone. Once again, using some color theory, maybe if the we have the red cowl and the bone is like a worn greenish white. Do some of that. A little more yellow, but that works. Um, we want it to look like bone. You imagine bone white, but the armor is really white. And if it's the most reflective thing, it can't be, the bone can't be as white as the reflections on the armor, just for the illusion. So at a certain point, we gotta stop highlighting the bone and punch the white of the reflective metal. Yeah, it's not bad. Looks kind of bony. Add some red into the brown on the shield just to make it cohesive with the cowl. I think I'll do a little texturing on the shield because it's really nice on the sculpt. Gotta let that dry. I'm fiddling too much there, but maybe some red on this garment again. Some scratches. And we can glaze that one more time and hide that white a little bit. It's a fun skeleton pose. That foot kind of turned in a little bit unnaturally. Boots are something I try to put minimal effort into. I want them to be visible and like have a color or something, but they're one of the less important parts of the visual impact. So if they're looking at the feet, I've done something wrong, you know? Suppose maybe this would kind of be wooden in the back. It's not quite sculpted that way, but that's fine if it's brownish. We lost quite a bit of the scratching, so I want to keep some of it. Do once over once it dries more. All right, I think I'm going to do the base just so we don't have to think about it. And then touch up the metal, call it good. Some sort of putrid grass. Do a red flower. All right, now I'm just going to follow my map and exaggerate the whitest highlights. With a little more precision, we'll hit like the rivets so they're visible. And with a shield rim like this, I think for the effect, it's really important to get that inside edge if we can, somewhat. That really sells the reflective metal if we can get it accurately. Nice. Yeah, who gets buried with spears? Were they reanimated with all this gear? Did they already have it, or were they outfitted by a commander? That's a good question. For the metals, make sure all the edges are at least lightly hit, but I'm not thinking too hard. I'm just looking for where I already mapped out the white, the lightest lights, and exaggerating those spots, and then making sure the edges are hit. There's a little pouch and belt on the back here. Don't want to worry about that too much, but make sure it's separated. It's a little bit of visible bone. Just give it a one hit there. Some scratches. And you know what? I think we're going to leave that. So less than 30 minutes? Not bad for a rank and file skeleton with some decent drama and detail. See one spot on the back here, maybe we can exaggerate this highlight. Thank you. Yeah, these are always fun. And when there's lots of the same material like that armor, it can really speed things up because we just kind of have to focus on that for the most part and then just like fill in the rest so it's visible, but the flashiness of the main material, especially when it's reflective metal, can leverage a lot of our paint jobs, so might be kind of cool to exaggerate this flat gradient a little darker here toward the bottom. maybe under the brim there could be kind of a shadow on the face. Nice. Yeah, it's the spear is an upsell, a funeral upsell. Yeah, I don't mind that. Maybe just a touch of a more gradual transition on the back here. Add some more mid right there. There we go. Some of this bone color got on the shield here, but maybe I don't mind that. It's like a reflection. I wouldn't go quite that far out, maybe, but or it's the boot or the ground or something, so we can just leave that. Not bad. Pretty good, one stream. Couple of cool models. Thank you, Finley. Thank you, Hippo. Yeah. Yeah, sometimes, just like I was like, we got 30 minutes left, how far can we get? And if you just stretch yourself with a little confidence, just keep the brush moving, you can surprise yourself with the details. Like that skeleton, I mean, we've done these skeletons over a whole stream for one, right? But sometimes if you just kind of as a fun experiment, you don't want to put stress on your hobby, but if you're just like, well, I have a short session, can I sort of just keep the momentum going and see how far I get? Yeah, I think you'd surprise yourself. And it's cool that this is stylized, like it's not realistic, like the armor's all blue and purple, but I think it's a cool vibe. Yeah, those are neat. Nice. All right, where are we at? It's June 25th already. July 2nd, next Thursday. It looks like I'll be around. So we should have a stream. We may have on the anvil back next Wednesday. We'll see. Keep an eye on the announcements channel. But for the time being, it looks like Thursday the 2nd, I will be here at the desk. So we can hang again. And I gotta get this freaking palette cam up for you all. But yeah, this is what it looks like here. Not very many colors, just kind of going with the flow, being spontaneous, and this got us two models right here. So not too shabby. I like that this is like a regular white that's a little more diluted than the heavy white for different things. I like both of those a lot, for metals especially. Like once you get the dark and mid-tones down, like you can get to the regular white fairly quickly because it's more transparent. so it won't be your brightest bright. And you can use that one color without thinking about it mapping out, but it will actually give you multiple values. Like as you increase opacity until the heavy white is the most opaque white. So it looks like you have like 16 different, you know, colors, definitely values going on, but you only use two paints. So that's why I like those a lot. The palette looks like your kindergarten. Look, Ma, put it on the fridge. Oh, that's funny. All right, y'all. Thank you for hanging with me, and I will see you next week. Happy to be back. I appreciate you being here. Have a good night. Bye.